this. What events, what emotions in your life made Margaret Sanger a crusader for birth control?
Well, Mr. Wallace, it's hard to say that any one thing has made one do this or that. I think from the very beginning, I came of a large family. My mother died young, 11 children. That made an impression on me as a child. I was a trained nurse, went among the people. I saw women who asked to have some means whereby they wouldn't have to have another pregnancy too early after the last child, the last abortion, which many of them had. So there's a number of things that are one after the other that really made you feel that you had to do something.
There are some other possible reasons that suggest themselves on reading your biography by Lawrence later. Your mother, as you say, died prematurely after bearing 11 children. She was born a Catholic, was she not?
She was born a Catholic, yes.
And
in Ireland.
Your father was a sort of a village atheist who clashed with church authorities, and because of his atheism, his earnings dwindled under community pressure. You and your brothers and sisters were known as, quote, children of the devil, end quote. Could it be then that, in part at least, you were driven emotionally toward the birth control movement because of antagonism toward the church, because that was a way to fight the church?
No, I don't think I had anything of the kind in mind. I was what I would call a born humanitarian. I don't like to see people suffer. I don't like to see cruelty, even to this day. And in nursing, you see a great deal of cruelty and unnecessary suffering. At that time, there was no opposition as far as the church was concerned, any church. It was mainly the law, the federal law and state laws that one had to think of. The church was not in my mind at all.
Well, in going after your motive then, and I will press you just a little bit more about that and then get to the specifics of this evening, but in your motive, in the movement, is it possible that the movement itself, the feeling of wanting to do anything that you felt was important, that perhaps that moved you a good deal? Because the fact remains that you led a movement against overwhelming pressures that stemmed back for centuries, and in doing so, according to your autobiography, you even left your first husband. And you wrote this to a friend, Mrs. Sanger. You said, "Where is the man to give me what the movement gives in joy and interest and freedom?" Now, what was this joy, this freedom that you craved?
Well, I don't remember that letter, who it was written, but I think that it was not a question of marriage at all. There was a certain satisfaction in doing something that was going to alleviate the sufferings of women in particular, and I was quite a feminist at the time.
Obviously.
And yes, and I naturally didn't want to see women take all the suffering of childbearing and of pregnancies.
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones. We're here breaking down Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger is a known eugenicist and a pioneer in the birth control movement, as well as Planned Parenthood being created. Margaret Sanger, from her purview in this interview, is painting herself as a humanitarian, as you heard her say, as somebody who was making sure women had options, women had choices. Now, that was a guise that she used to push the eugenics. I have several pieces of information here that some is saying, some is advocating for her as a eugenicist, some is not. So we have kind of mixed reviews, but I like that because I want to give information for both sides. But we're here talking about Margaret Sanger, but also the eugenics movement and how she helped push that eugenics movement here in the United States, and particularly how this eugenics movement targeted Black America. And given context, you know, remember, she's the mind behind the birth control pill. She's the mind behind Planned Parenthood. She pushed the baby deletions. She pushed baby deletions. I'm not saying she was a part of Roe v. Wade, but we do know since Roe v. Wade, baby deletions within the Black community have estimated up to maybe, I think, 50 million baby deletions since then. all in all, what we do know is eugenics is about creating a master race and controlling populations or even eliminating populations. And what we do know is the Black American population has been stagnant my entire life. I'm 40 years old. And our population has been stagnant that whole time. Our community, whether consciously or unconsciously, bought into a lot of the ideas and the philosophies that were promoted by Margaret Sanger. So we want to get into this, get into Margaret Sanger, get into how that still affects us to this day, the legacies of Margaret Sanger, the legacies of eugenics, and the legacies of Planned Parenthood. So, Pat, man, so far, like we just setting this foundation, man. So far, man, all right, overall thoughts about Margaret Sanger, man. What do you know? What's some things that you know about Margaret Sanger? What are your overall thoughts on Margaret Sanger, just based off of what you know about her so far?
What I know about Margarita Sangaria, is that she is a very complicated person, depending on the side of the aisle you're on, and depending on how you view her intentions. Me personally, I don't know her intentions. I know what she says, but I also know that people say a lot of things that aren't true. I do know her legacy as far as the impact that it has had on the Black community. And so that alone causes me not to view her in a positive light. But I know PC is a lot more knowledgeable about some of the more intimate details.
Hey, man, I ain't gonna say, you already said, I ain't gonna lie. Like, I had PC in mind when I constructed this. So, you know, this one's for you, big dog.
Yeah. This. So for everybody asking, this is a lob. This is alley-oop. So yeah. So I know a little something, but I know PC is gonna really delve into it. But my views about Miss Sanger are not very positive, simply because of, like I said, the impact of her work on the Black community. And whether or not, I don't even like to get into arguments about intentions with people, because those arguments tend to be disingenuous.
Right.
A brother like PC could spit out all the facts in the world with proof and evidence to showcase her intentions. And people that don't want to believe those are her intentions are just not going to hear any of it. There's no proof that it is great enough.
I got some information from Planned Parenthood about her. So we're going to get into it, though.
And I'm sure we are. But my overall general thoughts about her are that she is an integral part of Black genocide. And I think Black people need to think about and remember her as such, just in terms of a neutral orchestrator of it, because a lot of Black people feel a certain type of way about attaching negative emotions to it. Okay, that's fine. If you're one of those people, that's fine, but that doesn't change the fact that she has had an integral role in the death of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Black babies. And I personally think it's millions, but I'm using hundreds of thousands because I've seen that argument being had about the number, as if so. I'm doing all that knowing we're going to get deeper into it, but also trying to answer your question directly. My general thoughts about Margaret Sanger are that she are not positive, because she has been an integral part in Black genocide.
Gotcha. Dum da dum dum dum. All right, PC. So the way I'm gonna lay the question out to you, give us your thoughts on Margaret Sanger, but lay it out and kind of give the people who may not know some background information about Margaret Sanger.
Well, she was part of the Eugenics Society, and there were some other notable members of the Eugenics Society. One, Prescott Bush, was a member of the Eugenics Society. There's others, but when we even Booker T. Washington was a member of the Eugenics Society, but nobody was really sure about why he was there. Speculation, like
No,
Patty.
W.E.B. Du Bois.
The W.E.B. Du Bois? I thought
Yeah.
Booker T was too. Okay, W.E.B. Du Bois, member
Yeah.
of the Eugenics Society. So there's some speculation as to why they were both there. Well, they were there. Well, he was there. So, but Francis Cresswell, I mean, oh God, no. Let me rebuke because I wanted to get into Francis Galton. Francis Galton is considered the father of eugenics.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the cousin, I believe, like, I don't know, first or second cousin of Charles Darwin. And so in both of their theories, they both speculated in terms of the abilities, the cognitive abilities of groups of people based on their color, basically their skin color and race.
Right.
And so the theory of evolution versus the theory of eugenics coincided with one another. And through the eugenics was about the survival of the fittest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, so it took Darwinism and it actually made it practical. So they used terms like culling, like people would do with farm animals, or if you were trying to breed certain animals, you would kill off the weaker strain, and then you would to allow the stronger strains to multiply and the stronger genes to multiply in terms of getting a better breed. And so they applied this to people and human beings. And some of it was derived towards people who they would consider inbred imbeciles. And they would want to stop their opportunities to reproduce. So that was some of the first passed laws in different states. What makes her situation unique is that she was the leading agent in terms of pushing this agenda forward with the full support of the Rockefeller Foundation. And that needs to be understood. And so they determined, they created the ABC League, the American Birth Control League, and I believe it was in the 20s, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't really have a chance to look up the dates for specifics. But that then was the seed for the child that was then later created from that, which was Planned Parenthood. And it was strategically placed in Black communities at this particular time, because at that point of history, you didn't have a significant Latino population or other said minority population in the country right now at that particular time. Their target was the Black community.
Right.
She would have meetings with pastors and you know, these Negroes are all easily bought and paid for. They would allow her to come to the congregation and speak at their Sunday services about the options of birth control and most importantly, the options of child deletion. And so she was pushed behind the whole contraceptive movement that you spoke on earlier. And her primary purpose was to eliminate the reproductive power of Black people, because they see things as you know, as eugenics, they see this as a war. Now, her talking about being a humanitarian, well, people talk about that all the time. Hitler saw himself as a humanitarian. A lot of people don't know that. Hitler himself derived this whole movement in terms of the extermination of the Jewish population based on the theory of eugenics and how it was used in America, specifically against Black people. The Tuskegee experiment was part of the eugenics exercises in terms of policy and influencing policy in America. And he took those lessons. He was also a student of Prescott Bush's. So this is a whole, see, because she's the figurehead, but there was a whole movement behind her that not only profited off of the suffering of Black people, but also this was the final solution for them too. It was just, they play this game where they have it's the culling game, and it's called what is it called? One of them is where you have a long term, and I know somebody in the comments is going to be able to shorten this up, where it's sort of indirect in terms of the culling, and then there's direct culling like wars or genocides. So the indirect cullings are the ones in which you sicken the people over time. You reduce their numbers over time. And so this whole push behind the freedom of women having control of their bodies, that was the propaganda that was used, similar to what's been used today, but that was the same propaganda used back then in terms of wanting women to be unbridled with the burden of bearing children and so forth. And what we do learn is that once those options became available, women became less responsible in regards to how they moved sexually. They became more promiscuous, and they engaged in more risky sexual behavior after that. And so this is a small part because she was the catalyst for a lot of things that happened after that.